Hello, ladies and gentlemen, have I got a story for you? So recently, in these past couple of weeks, I have been dealing with a bunch of mortally distressing respiratory issues that have nothing to do with COVID in the middle of a big pandemic. And man, it has been just a mess. I've been a wreck, but I think I finally got it all figured out and everything's getting back into order. So now it's time to do the post-mortem and tell you guys where I've been, what I've been going through, and the experience of it all, because it is a story. And we're just going to go ahead and do this chronologically because I'm not sure how else to go about this. So let's go back in December. My wife and I had just bought a new home because we've had a child and we're trying to figure out what we want to do next with our lives. As it turns out, renting is really expensive, especially as you need to move up to a larger place to accommodate a family. So the only real option is to buy a house or just flush a lot of money down the toilet and never get any kind of return on it. So we buy this house, and when we first move in, I noticed that I actually am having a lot of asthma-related trouble. I have asthma, and usually it's pet-related. Like, I get around cats, and then I suffocate. So this is something that's been going on since I was a small child. I don't even remember the first time I had an asthma attack. It's been going on for that long. But I've been able to manage it really well. Usually, I just have like a Zyrtec or something every day, and I don't have any kind of asthma trouble. Everything's fine. So when we first move into this house, I'm having this asthma trouble at night. Like, I can't lay down, and it's so bad that I actually leave and then go to our old place because the lease isn't quite up yet, and I stay the night there. So the following morning, I go to the store and I buy an air purifier, like a good one, some kind of Honeywell thing, like an expensive one, and probably one that's a bit overkill for most of the rooms in the house. So we tear up the carpets, and I put this Honeywell filter all around the house into every room and let it do its thing for a while until I feel comfortable being in the house. And these carpets are actually pretty old. We find out that the previous residents who own the house had added furniture fixtures that would normally be like nailed to the floor. Like, there's a loft, and they had a ladder that goes up to the loft, and they'd nailed this ladder into the ground through the carpet. So we knew that the carpet hadn't been changed in a while, and also that the previous owners had pets. They had cats and dogs, and I'm allergic to the hair of dogs, I think, because we have a little dachshund and she doesn't bother me. She's got short hair. But definitely cats. Any kind of cat always really messes me up. So I know they've had cats. I know the carpets haven't been changed in a long time. I assume there's just tons of pet hair in the carpet. So we roll these carpets up, and we get a truck to, we call my parents, and my parents come by with a truck to throw these carpets away. And then we find out that the local dump services have all been bought up by like a single company. And so before the, financial recession, before the housing crash, they were separate companies, and the price to throw stuff away, each load would have been like, I don't know, $30, $40. But now that it's all a monopoly, it's like $100 per load. So we would have to chop up this carpet into a bunch of different loads and then take it all down there and deposit it for several $100. We're thinking like, $400 or $500 to throw all this carpet away because we can't really, the truck's not very big and we can't fill it up. So it turns out though that there's a dumpster day in April in the neighborhood, and so we decide that we'll just stow this stuff in the garage for now and we'll throw it all away in April when the dumpster day rolls around. So fast forward on into March and things start to warm up, and throughout this time, we've actually had some cold symptoms and some other things that we believe were maybe like nasal infections or something like that because they've been persisting. My wife was having some issues where she was having a little bit of vertigo, and it was kind of coming and going, and the doctor was having a hard time figuring it out. They'd given her some prescriptions and tried to treat it with antibiotics, and it was a little tricky because she would take these things and it would sort of go away, and then it would kind of come back, and because it was chronic, but mostly just it was concerning, but mostly just annoying, we sort of wrote it off as, well, maybe she's getting crystals, maybe it's the dust in the house, we didn't do a very good job when we put the floorboards down, or something like that. And we were kind of just trying to figure it out. It hadn't yet occurred to us that maybe there was something more sinister in the air. But by March, things started to warm up. And I've already given it away that we've got this carpet in the garage. So if you haven't already figured out, this was the problem all along. But the air warms up, and then my wife's problems get worse. And then one day, I'm starting to have really bad asthma. And I don't know what's causing it. Normally, asthma doesn't get set off like this for me. I don't tend to have really bad episodes of asthma. And in fact, my asthma is usually so well managed that I actually haven't picked up my albuterol in maybe 10 years. Like, the albuterol is your rescue inhaler. You take it when you're having a big asthma attack, and then you get away from the allergen and you let things calm down. So I haven't picked this thing up in 10 years, and it's a sheer stroke of luck that I still have an active prescription, because my primary care physician noticed during a checkup that I hadn't been getting the thing refilled. And so she just wrote me one for like, well, you should probably have an active prescription, she said, and so I'll just write you one and you can keep it, and if you need it, you'll go get it. And then I let that lapse. It expired, and then I went into the pharmacy, and the pharmacist saw that I had let that lapse. And he said, I'll just send a refill request on this. And, this isn't normally typical. You don't see that kind of action necessarily. When a patient isn't filling, you don't really go out of your way normally. But this pharmacist, he was just like, you shouldn't let this lapse. Do you mind if I just send a refill request since I see it expired kind of recently? And I was like, well, that's fine. So anyway, I was having asthma trouble at night, and I went to bed, and the asthma trouble kind of went away, which is weird. Because when you have asthma, any of you out there who have it, you probably are aware that when you lay down, the congestion actually will tend to settle in your lungs, and the asthma will get worse. Laying down is generally not what you want to do to make things better. Normally, you'd want to take your inhaler, sit upright. If you can, walk around a little bit, because it'll help get the stuff out of your system. You'll cough it up. So laying down made it better, which was strange. And I couldn't figure out what exactly the deal was, but I thought, maybe just there was something that I got into or something happened that was exacerbating these symptoms, and then I'd be fine the next morning. But in the next day, in that afternoon, my asthma started to get bad, and then it got really bad. And then it got probably the worst I've ever had it. Like, an asthma attack is like if you've ever seen one of those little coffee stir straws, where they just have those two tiny straws on either side. Imagine trying to breathe through one of those, and that's your only access to oxygen. Do that for a little while, and just let yourself feel the panic that sets in as you're not getting a proper amount of oxygen. And now, that's like an ordinary asthma attack. This is some kind of like super asthma attack. I have never had this bad before. And so I asked Claudia, I'm trying not to panic, and so I call the pharmacy near me, and I ask if they could transfer my prescription and fill my albuterol inhaler there. And so it turns out that they don't have the inhaler in stock in my local place, because there's been a bit of a run on medications due to this whole COVID thing. So I call the pharmacy where I used to get my medications back when I lived in another area of town. It's a larger store, and they do have it in stock. So I drive down there to go pick up this med. And the whole way there, it feels like it goes by in a flash, because I'm kind of fading in and out. Like, I'm not getting enough oxygen, and you're getting this sort of spiraling blackening sense, like the walls are closing in. And I'm just trying to stay relaxed, because getting too excited can make these symptoms worse. And again, I've never had asthma this bad, so I'm hoping I'll get the inhaler, I'll take it, and I'll feel better. So I get to the store, and I'm just waiting patiently for them to fill my meds, trying not to panic, not really sure what to do, knowing that with this whole respiratory pandemic going on, that if I show any symptoms of asthma, everyone's gonna think I have COVID. I don't want anyone to think that I'm having a COVID attack. It's some sort of asthma thing. There's a huge difference. So I get the prescription, and I take a puff of the albuterol. Nothing happens. And again, if you've got asthma, imagine you take your albuterol inhaler and it doesn't help. And you're in the middle of the worst asthma attack in your life. And so I don't know what to make of this. I take another hit of it. Still no good. I try a third hit. I'm still suffering from it. And so Claudia was shopping a little bit, because while we're there, we may as well pick stuff up. There's been shortages of things, and this is a bigger store, so they actually had a little bit more stuff. So she comes out, and I tell her, I think I need to go to the hospital. Like, the albuterol's not working. So I get to the hospital, and they take me in, and then I'm not admitted or anything like that. They just take me in, and apparently what they write down as my symptoms is cough. And I find this out later when a nurse looks at the computer, and she says, "Oh, you're just in here for a cough," and she kind of scoffs at me. And so they actually don't do anything for me. They just sit me in this bed, and after about an hour, the symptoms kind of go down. and I'm feeling a little bit better. And so they give me a spacer, and they're like, maybe you just took your albuterol. You took your inhaler wrong. And they don't really speculate on it or anything like that. I think at this point they're seeing a lot of people coming into the hospital who are worried they have COVID, and they think that I'm just one of these worrywarts. I came in because I'm one of these people. So I feel a little embarrassed and a little stupid. It felt life-threatening, but when you get that kind of reaction from the doctor where they just write down cough and then they sort of laugh it off and they don't do anything for you, you feel pretty dumb, and you know that they probably charged you $500 for that because this is America and this is how it goes. So I go home and, I don't know what to make of it. And by this point it's late and I wind up going to bed and I feel fine at night. Again, which is weird, because when I'm having asthma trouble, usually, again, laying down is when it gets to be at its worst, and I can't figure this out. Why am I having this asthma attack where I'm fine if I lay down, like I can sleep? I can usually never sleep in an asthma-related environment. If there were a cat in the house, I would have to get out of there. I couldn't lay down, it would be terrible. So it's baffling to me, I don't get it. And I wake up, and I go about my routine for a while, and then in the afternoon again, I have another asthma attack, but this time my throat starts to swell up. And I've never had an anaphylactic attack before in all my life. This is terrifying. Like, man, not only are you like breathing through one of these tiny straws, but now I can feel my throat's closing. And I don't know what to do. So I asked Claudia just to take me to the hospital, and she says, which one? Do you want to go to the one we went to last time? And I said, the nearest one. Just wherever is nearest, just take me down to the hospital right now. I am concerned I'm going to die. Like, this could go any minute. I don't know how long it'll take. So we get in the car, and we start driving down to the hospital. The hospital's about 7 minutes away from me, but it takes about 15 minutes to get there, because what's going on is there's this big parade of cars for people who are sad that their kids got pulled out of school, and so they're driving through the neighborhood to say hi to all the teachers. And so we wind up stuck in traffic. There's like a stop sign and we have right of way, but the car ahead of us is charmed by this parade. So instead of taking the right of way and driving forward, he's letting the parade pass him. So we're just sitting there watching this parade of cars, and eventually he gets bored and he moves on. And fortunately, by the time we get there, I'm starting to feel like the throat swelling is passing. I'm still having the asthma. I'm still suffering and everything like that. But they take me in. I sit down in the bed, and they ask me what's going on. And the previous night, what I had done, and also that afternoon, is I'd taken some fluticasone because my nose was also swelled up, and I was trying to treat that swelling in my nasal cavity. Again, I had actually thought this was somehow related to a sinus infection. So I get in and I tell them, they say, well, have you taken any new drugs or anything recently? Why would you get this throat swelling? And I said, well, I tried some fluticasone this morning and last night. And even when I said it, I thought the timeline didn't really add up, because I'd taken the fluticasone, several hours before my throat swelled up. I'd taken it in the morning when I woke up. And again, couldn't account for it, but it was the only new thing that I'd done. And I'd never had an anaphylactic reaction to anything before. So they say, okay, you're probably allergic to fluticasone. And they got some stuff to inject me with some steroids to make my immune reaction to go down. And they said, how are you feeling now? And I said, well, I feel like it's starting to pass. So they said, okay, well, we'll give you some pills and we'll observe you for a little while. And if you're okay, it's probably just an anaphylactic reaction. Maybe it wasn't that severe, but you'll be able to go home. It's not a big deal. And in fairness, you probably should really be at home because, you're at a higher risk really for COVID in the hospital than you are anywhere else. Those nurses were a little snarky at the local hospital. And even on the way out, one of them was like, yeah, it's really more like, I joked. I was like, you're going to throw me back to the wild, huh? I'm a little too small. And she goes, no, the wild isn't here. We're releasing you to safety. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll bear that in mind. So they sent me home with a prescription for some steroids and a couple of antihistamines that I didn't normally take. So that the idea is just that sometimes you can have a little bit of a relapse. You can have what they call like a biphasic reaction, where if you had one anaphylactic reaction, then maybe you get through it at the hospital, but then you have a second one several hours later, and then usually they're gone. It's over with. And sure enough, in fact, actually before I left, they asked me how I was, and I told them that I was although I'd gotten over it, I was starting to feel tightness in my chest again, which was strange because and they said, well, what do you mean like tightness in my chest? And I said, well, it's like I'm it's like I'm around a cat. Like when I've been around a cat for too long, you start to feel this sort of the asthma symptoms, and they set in gradually. I'm starting to feel that, and I don't know what to make of that. So they gave me an x-ray, and came back negative. Actually, the first place did give me an x-ray too, because one of the big things you see with COVID is if you've got pneumonia, it shows up. You can see it in the x-ray. So twice now I've had an x-ray. Twice now the x-ray comes back totally clean. Everything's fine. My oxygen levels are pretty well because they're all good because this has all been really acute. I'm not like, it's not walking pneumonia or anything like that. We can at least conclude I don't have pneumonia. So, yeah, I go home, and then I'm kind of just doing my thing, hanging around, watching my kid, and then I start to have another anaphylactic attack. My throat starts swelling up and everything, and so I'm taking Benadryl now to try and fight this, and my inhaler, and I don't think I was supposed to take the steroids yet, so I hadn't taken the steroid, but none of it was working, and so I call the hospital, and they tell me I can take more Benadryl. And so I take more Benadryl, and then I go lay down, and I start to feel better. And again, baffling, because laying down doesn't normally make asthma better. This is really important. I'm going to reveal to you the secret of this at the end of the story. But yeah, laying down, it's I don't know why it's making me feel better. So I keep having this attack, and eventually it passes at like 2 a.m. It finally kind of clears up. I've been in my room just laying down all this time, and I can't account for it at all. I have no idea what the deal is. So I wake up the next morning, I take this steroid, I take all these antihistamines and everything, and then, again, around the afternoon, another attack sets in. And it's the same thing. It's like swelling up. It feels like anaphylaxis. I don't know what's going on. And I had already actually called my doctor to get an appointment set up. And so my doctor's got some things going on. And at this point, we just think that it's some kind of anaphylactic reaction to fluticasone, because that's the logical thing. But I tell her about the sinus pressure I've been having and all this other stuff. So she thinks that maybe I had some kind of bacterial infection, and maybe my asthma was flaring up as a response to the bacterial infection. So while I'm taking these steroids to suppress my immune system, she puts me on a antibiotic, so that way I'm not, fighting off a bacterial infection with a weakened immune system or anything like that. So she's got me on some drugs, and they're trying to get me maintained so I get back into healthy order. But I have this reaction again, and it's like Friday or Saturday. The timeline's a little blurry in my head. I'd have to think about it. But the point is, it was past the point where I could get a hold of my primary care physician again. And I don't know what to do, so I just take like 2 Benadryl and 2 puffs on the inhaler, and it doesn't go away. And so I take more Benadryl and more albuterol, and it doesn't go away. It's awful. It feels awful. And like I say, this is not just uncomfort. Like the swelling hurts. It's not a pleasant experience, and I can't breathe. I'm not getting enough oxygen. My chest is swelled up. Like my breathing ways are all closing up. I can't breathe out of my nose, and I'm panicking. This sense of just mortal doom is present over me this entire time, and the Benadryl is making me tired, and the albuterol is just, my heart is racing, because albuterol really just it makes you super nervous. Like you can't normally sleep after you have albuterol, so I'm taking a lot of albuterol, and I'm just like crazy nervous, and I'm trying to stay calm and everything, and eventually I just go like lay down in my room for a while, and I sort of wait it out, and the symptoms kind of roll away really gradually. It doesn't feel consistent with any of the meds that I've taken. It just, they kind of go away. And so at this point, I'm thinking like, man, I don't know what's going on, but I guess it's responding to medication just really slowly. And God, it's anxiety inducing. It's the most awful I've ever felt in my life. I don't know what to do with this. But I'm starting to feel a little bit better, and Claudia and I are a team, so I want to go watch Miles for a while and let her do work, because Claudia's working for home right now with the shelter-in-place orders. So I come back out, and I watch Miles for a little while, and the symptoms start to come back up, and then my throat swells up, and it's the exact same thing all over again, and it's panic, and I take more Benadryl and more albuterol because I think that these symptoms are responding to the medicine. It just, they happen, it's so slow. It takes such a long time. I just can't believe the albuterol is working so slowly. I don't understand it. So I fight it for a while, and then I wind up going, I lay back down, and it's just rolling like this on and off. And so I'll feel a little bit better and come out and then do some things. And I'm talking to people on the internet. And if I get too excited and I speak too loudly, like I'm kind of quiet because I'm not feeling good. So they're like, speak up, and I speak loudly from the diaphragm for a while and then just get winded. And I go lay down because I'm feeling awful. And the night rolls around and the symptoms go away. I'm laying down in my room. Again, this is the pattern. And I can sleep. And since this is like, it's an ongoing thing now. Like, I don't get it. Like, why is it not striking me at night? What am I doing in the afternoon? This is where I start to think about, like, there must be something I'm doing in the afternoon. It's something I'm eating. Maybe I've developed an allergy to something. Like, you don't normally get allergies from things that you're familiar with. But I tend to eat a peanut butter sandwich every day. And I'm not sure where the link here is, because as far as I recall, there was actually a day that I just had a ham sandwich. No peanut butter. And I had an allergic reaction. Like, that was early on. So I'm not really sure, but I think like, well, maybe it's my lunch. And so the next day I try to have a different lunch, and it's the same thing. I have these horrific symptoms again. And again, it's just this mortal sense of dread that just like, I feel like I'm dying. I guess the best way to describe it is imagine like a 10-year-old or someone who doesn't quite have the strength in their hands to strangle you to death, is all the same trying to strangle you to death. And they're holding on for as long as they can until their fingers get tired. And the only reason why that feeling of strangulation goes away is because they get too tired to keep it up. And then when later on, they get a second wind and they go back to trying to strangle you again. This is like my day for the entire weekend. And I don't go back to the emergency room because, again, if this is responding to medication, the emergency room isn't really for ongoing maintenance. I don't know really what to do or where to go with this because these symptoms feel imminently life-threatening. Time and time again, there's at one point when I panic and I ask Claudia to take me to the hospital again because I feel like it's getting really bad. But I've taken a whole bunch of meds, and then, because the panic just it wells up inside you, and I say, take me to the hospital. And then I gave it a few minutes, like when she got her shoes on and everything, I was like, okay, hang on, maybe not. And it's like I go lay down and I start to feel better. And so it's Claudia's just getting ragged, worried about me. And she hasn't been telling me this, but she's also been feeling kind of sick. And she's not sure what it is, but it's different. It's more in her heart that she says she's feeling. She's been getting these kind of heart palpitations and lightheadedness, and she chalks it up to anxiety because I've been making her really anxious these past couple of days. She says, yeah, I don't, I didn't want to, at one of our more lucid points, she was just like, yeah, like, I don't want to alarm you or detract from what's going on with you, but I have been just feeling awful lately. And I think it's just the anxiety, but I'm not in great shape right now either. And I say, man, I don't know. And so the thought crosses my mind, like, maybe it's mold, maybe it's something. But we actually had a mold guy come in and check around the house, and we had 2 really small patches of mold in the basement, where we'd pried up the baseboard, and like this patch is so small that the baseboard was able to hide the mold patch, right? So we knew that there'd been flooding, and when the mold guy was down there, he kind of looked around and he's like, yeah, there's been some flooding, you can tell at some point in the past, because here's these little mold patches on the bottom of the wall. I'm not really seeing anything up. He checked the place for moisture. He's like, whatever's going on, it's dry now. All that damage was in the past. This mold has probably been dormant for a really long time. So he says, if you just put a plastic bag over this, get a N95 mask. This was before the pandemic, by the way. He's like, get an N95 mask, and then, you just cut this out with a knife and then throw it away, and you should be fine. It's not even anything. But you can see here, he said, if you look at the carpet tack, there's a little bit of rust on it. The carpet tack is rusted, so you know that there was definitely some flooding in this basement before, and there's an aftermarket sump pump right here. And so he was kind of just like, yeah, there's been water damage in the house, but it looks like it was a long time ago to me. So we'd had it confirmed that there was a little bit of mold, and maybe there was some water trouble in the past, but it seems to have all been mitigated, or at least not recent at all. And so the thought crossed my mind that it was somehow mold related, but all the mold we'd been able to find was just these tiny little patches, and you don't normally get these really bad symptoms from mold from just tiny little patches on the wall that are so small that a baseboard can hide them. So, like I say, I think mold, but I can't logically figure out, well, where would the mold be? Because if there's mold, it's got to be a larger patch. It's got to be a big patch of mold that would be causing these problems. So, like I say, for the rest of the weekend, I'm just suffering like this, just throwing tons of Benadryl at the problem, albuterol, all kinds of stuff, and I'm not really able to get out of the house very much because the shelter-in-place situation, I'm not sure what to do or where to go. The thought crosses my mind that it might be the house, but then this fact that I can sleep at night really throws a wrench in that theory. And so by Monday, I'm able to get a hold of the doctor, and I tell her everything that I know, and she's kind of on the same page with me, but now she's really concerned because, like I say, I'm describing to her symptoms that sound life-threatening, but they're responding to drugs, and so she's not really sure what to think of it. And we really like this doctor. She's really good, and so we kind of talk about like some theories on what she thinks it could be, or some possibilities, but she really needs to have me go do some tests. So she says, where do you normally go for tests? And I tell her the name of the hospital that I usually go for just my general maintenance stuff, because I've got some other... I've got Hashimoto's, which is actually an autoimmune disorder that attacks your own thyroid. And I do bring that up. I say, do you think that's linked? And she says, well, a lot of times when you have stuff, if you've got asthma and Hashimoto's, your immune system is actually pretty aggressive. And it's common to see people develop new things as they get older as a result of this. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily related to the thyroid, but it could be related to just your general state. You might be experiencing something new, and we just need to figure out what it is. So she said, I'm going to try and call down to that hospital, but I have to warn you that a lot of the specialists have been, they're not doing this testing anymore because they're preparing for the pandemic. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you any tests, but I'm going to do my best. And so that morning, though, I had actually woken up feeling awful. I normally feel good in the mornings. I would wake up in the morning, take the steroid, and I'd feel good until about the afternoon. And this was such a consistent pattern. I was talking on the Discord about it, and they were joking, and they were like, well, maybe you're allergic to 2 p.m., because didn't you say like a lot of time you have a reaction kind of close to 2 p.m.? And it wasn't actually that consistent. I had one at like 11 o'clock, and I was just trying to figure out the pattern. It was like, what am I doing? Because if I could figure out the time when I was having these symptoms, if there was some kind of pattern, if it was like every day at 2 p.m., I must be doing something at 1 p.m. I was just trying to figure it out. And so saying, yeah, it's been going on for several days, and I feel like 2 p.m. is around when it tends to set in, but sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. I couldn't make sense of it. So they were joking, throw out the clocks. And anyway, though, so here's a big hint. I have had that air filter that I bought when I first moved in. It's been running in my bedroom since December. Since I've moved in, it's been running in. It's been running nonstop. I've never turned it off. And I've just left it on the highest setting. My wife complains it sounds like a jet engine. She likes to turn it off when we lay down and talk to each other because she doesn't like to talk over it. But I would just turn it right back on. And, it did a really good job. In that first day when I moved in, I was really surprised at how quickly the air cleared up just from running this one air filter. So I leave it on religiously, to the point where I'm not even thinking about it. But on Sunday night, the thing shows a light that says you need to change the air filter. And I say, okay, well, I guess that I'm supposed to do this every 3 months according to the manufacturing guidelines. And so I acknowledge that, and I let the thing run on a lower setting. I don't turn it off, I just run it on a lower setting because I figure, well, the filter's getting dirty anyway, which means it's probably not doing as good of a job as it could. I'll just let it run on this lower setting, and we'll get a new filter whenever. I don't know, when I get this sorted. And that night, sleeping didn't make me feel better. I woke up suffering symptoms. I had swelling in my throat. I was feeling bad, not at my worst. But then once I got out of the room and I started to do things, the steroid didn't really help. And the Benadryl wasn't really helping, and the albuterol wasn't really helping. I just stayed miserable pretty much throughout the day, and then it got worse. And after the doctor call, I had just this big episode, and my dad called. And it was kind of nice out, and I was feeling terrible, and so I just decided to go outside for a while, and I talked to my dad for like an hour outside in the sun, just trying to stay relaxed so I didn't panic my dad, because he's been calling me twice a day while I've been having these symptoms, just trying to make sure that I'm okay. And so after I'm done talking to my dad, I kind of come down from this respiratory episode, and I just come in, and at this point I'm delirious with all these meds that I've been taking. I'm dehydrated. Like I think the albuterol really was what was drying me out, but I can't be sure because I was taking famotidine, which is like for stomach stuff. My gut was really alkaline. This was kind of funny. Once I've quit taking the famotidine, I was having a lot of heartburn. I've had heartburn for the past couple of days. So I was just taking a bunch of drugs trying to stop this. And I just tell Claudia, like, I'm so exhausted and I feel like I'm coming down from this episode, but can you please just take me to the hospital where the doctor's going to try and find these tests. Maybe I can get help there, and then maybe I'll get the tests. I don't know. And so I go in, and my heart rate is 140 because I'm speedballing albuterol with Benadryl, and I'm not feeling good. And so they kind of they're sympathetic. Because I'm feeling bad. I'm doing something to myself here. If it's not, they don't know what to make of my symptoms, but I'm definitely killing myself with the drugs. And so I just tell them what I'm taking. They're like, how many? I'm taking Benadryl. And they're like, how many have you had? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, okay, what else? And I'm like, albuterol. And they're like, how much have you had? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, just this morning? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I lost track. I'm not sure anymore. And they're like, oh, okay. Because they were like, yeah, I was wondering how you were still awake after all that Benadryl. And I was like, yeah, it's the albuterol. It's keeping me up. And so they were like, okay. So they put me in a room and they took some blood tests because, they don't know what's causing these symptoms. And everyone's thinking COVID. Like I said, that first hospital just put me down for cough because they think I'm in there malingering or something like that. And so these guys come back and I've got some signs that maybe I might have sepsis. And sepsis you get if your body's trying to fight off an infection. You get like a lot of inflammation and stuff like that. So they say like, okay, you might have sepsis. So we're going to admit you to the hospital and we're going to give you these steroids and we're going to give you a lot of fluids. And then we're just going to check you. And if you don't have sepsis, then we'll probably send you home the next morning. But for now, we're just going to keep an eye on you. So they kept me throughout the night. And I wind up feeling better. Like I actually start to have another respiratory attack come on, but then they give me an injection of steroids directly into my veins and it goes away. And they ask me like, what am I taking? And I tell them like, well, I've been taking an outrageous amount of albuterol and Benadryl. And they're like, all right, you can have more of that anytime. And I say, okay. I also take like some Zyrtec and some stuff for my thyroid, and I try to tell them kind of all that I've been taking, and they're like, well, they're like, what do you want? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I need the thyroid, and I guess maybe albuterol. And then they're like, okay, and we'll put the Benadryl because if the Benadryl makes you feel more comfortable, then we want you to feel comfortable, so you can just have more Benadryl anytime. Just ask. And by this point, I don't even want to touch Benadryl again in my life. I am sick to death of Benadryl and albuterol for that matter. So I don't argue with them. I'm still not feeling good, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, whatever. Benadryl and albuterol, yeah, fine. If I never have to ask for another of these drugs in my life, I'll be glad. So, I'm sitting around for a while, and I'm trying to talk to the attendees, the people who are coming in just to change my stuff out, and they have to help me to the restroom because I'm hooked up to the IV and everything like that. And so I'm trying to talk to them about what's going on, and I'm just saying like, yeah, so these are my symptoms. And I find out that they actually totally ignored my symptom, the throat swelling. They've totally ignored it. They haven't written it down anywhere. They didn't really take it seriously because it doesn't make any sense, right? Like your throat doesn't swell up and then go down and then swell up and then go down. That's not really how anaphylaxis works. Normally you either get away from the allergen or get treated for it, or you just die, right? You don't have rolling anaphylaxis. That's the weirdest thing. And so the doctors think that's dumb. They don't write it down. So I'm trying to talk to this guy, and it becomes evident really quickly that he doesn't really know anything about asthma. And so it kind of winds up being like I tell him more about the symptoms of asthma than he can tell me about this thing I've been going through. And this becomes a pattern. Most of the people who come in that I talk to, they have no idea what any of this is about or what it means. They don't even really know what sets off asthma. So I'm just kind of sitting here with like the drugs that I told them I had are all that they know to give me. and I don't normally, like, the hospital doesn't give you an inhaler. Like, if they give you an inhaler, it's hospital prices, so it's like $2,000 for an inhaler. And so I was like, yeah, would that be okay? Like, I normally don't need a lot of, and they're like, yeah, it'll be like $2,000, but if you need it, we can give you a nebulizer treatment. And nebulizers it's like nuclear asthma solution. If you've got a real bad asthma problem, then you take a nebulizer treatment and it'll blow your lungs completely away. And so I was like, oh, that sounds like a lot. I've never had a nebulizer treatment before. I'll be good. I'll be fine. And so the next day in the afternoon, the doctor comes in, and I think all she sees on my chart is asthma. And she already seems mad. I had actually been coughing that morning, and they'd given me a mask when I came in. And one of the nurses, you kind of get this on and off, where some people are sympathetic, and they're kind of like, well, maybe you came in for something real. And then other people are a little passive aggressive. So like when I came in, I was wearing the mask, and I just didn't take it off because I was having respiratory problems. They gave it to me at the hospital when I came in. Like, I walked in, and they were like, what are you in for? And I was like, I'm suffocating. And they were like, here's this mask. Put this on and don't take it off. And I go, okay. And so I just never took it off. No one told me to take it off, so I never took it off. And so one of the nurses, she's like, oh, you got a mask. Wow, those are really hard to come by today. And you could tell she was a little mad at me. And I was like, yeah, they gave it to me at the front. And she goes, oh, right, yeah, I forgot they're doing that. And so I was coughing because I was having some asthma trouble that following morning. And so I put the mask back on because if you're coughing, you're supposed to wear the mask. And so the doctor was mad. She's like, are you coughing? And I was like, well, I think it's asthma related, but I don't know. And she's like, and so she cut me off. She's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, well, I'm feeling better than and she goes, why are you wearing a mask? And so she wasn't really, it was very confrontational, and it was I wasn't prepared to be confronted. I hadn't really slept that night. And again, I think this doctor thought that I was malingering again. It was something. She wasn't taking it seriously because the chart said asthma. It didn't say like throat swelling. It didn't say like symptoms of anaphylaxis. It just said asthma. So she's like, what do you know? She goes, there's something in your house. Do you have a pet? And I was like, yeah, I've got a little dachshund, but I've been living with her for years. She never gave me trouble. She goes, is there mold in your house? And I was like, well, there's 2 small patches in the basement. And she goes, well, it's something in your house. You have to get out of the hospital. You can't be here. And I say, well, I mean, isn't there, I can't figure out what's causing this. Is there anyone who can do a test or anything that's going on? And she goes, do you have somewhere else to go? And the answer was, given the stay-at-home orders, was really no. I could stay with my parents, but I worry about their health. They're at much greater risk than I am for the COVID situation, and especially because I've been in the hospital several times, I didn't want to go to my parents' house and then bring COVID into their home and then really threaten their lives. And my sister is actually a hospital worker at one of the hospitals that's been accepting COVID patients, and she's been directly exposed to them numerous times. She's been saying that because they don't have the proper safety equipment, it's only a matter of time before she got it. And in fact, around when I was admitted into the hospital, she came down with a fever. And she's actually been experienced, so we're pretty sure she's got COVID. They actually did a test and it came back negative, but she's got all the symptoms. She's got the fever and the respiratory issues, fatigue, all that. And it's pretty much like a no-brainer. It's like she's been seeing COVID patients. She's been doing the x-rays and confirming these people have COVID. She's there. She's probably got COVID. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And then my wife's family is all way out of town. So we would have to drive out for hours to go stay with anyone else, and I don't really know that I would want to impose on any friends or anything like that. I can't say yeah, I've been in the hospital a whole bunch. Do you mind if I come over? It's sort of like, oh, I don't know, man. My house just caught fire. I can't go. So it's sort of like I tell her I don't know where I could go. And then she's like, well, you have to get out of here. And so I ask her. I just look at her and I ask. I'm not trying to be cheeky or anything like this, but I just say, well, if I have these symptoms again, if I go home and I have these symptoms, should I come back in or should I keep trying to treat it? And she goes, call a specialist and then I'm going to discharge you tomorrow. And that's it. And so I'm just I'm just there. And it was all kind of so fast that after she left, I go to the nurse and I'm like, so I think I'm staying, right? I'm staying another night. And then she's like, I'll go check the notes. And I was like, okay. I think that's where that conversation concluded. I think I'm staying another night. So yeah, the doctor just wasn't having it. And so after this, they pretty much stopped coming in my room. I think they're trying to limit exposure with me. They probably are trying not to, like, coming in with asthma symptoms, that puts me at risk for respiratory problems if I were to develop any. So they're just generally trying to avoid me. But as this day goes on, I start having, like I said, I was having asthma symptoms in the morning, and they didn't get better. They just kind of kept getting worse. And they were still giving me these steroids to suppress my immune system. But the asthma kept getting worse and worse. And so I tried to negotiate with one of the nurses. I called one in and I said, hey, I normally take like a Zyrtec to help manage my allergies. I think that would help a lot. Would you mind if I could have one of those? It's over the counter. It's probably okay, and I'm familiar with it. And they're like, yeah, I'll go check. And they come back like, 2 hours later, and they're like, we don't have Zyrtec. And I was like, oh, okay. And they didn't recommend anything else for me. So I could have like asked if they had some other allergy meds that I was familiar with, but I wasn't really regularly taking anything else. So it seemed like a bad idea to try to barter for drugs that were unfamiliar to me, especially when I'm just trying to figure out the pattern in my symptoms. And, I don't want to take like another drug and then have an allergic reaction to it and have one more confound in the whole mess. So I just kind of waited out, and the asthma gets kind of worse and worse. And finally I say like, well, you said I could have a Benadryl, right? And it's like midnight. So I say, I guess maybe I'll just have a Benadryl, and maybe it'll make me feel better, and also it'll let me sleep. Because I can't really, it's hard to sleep when you're having asthma symptoms, because again, that's sort of, when you're struggling to get oxygen, your brain goes into a panic mode. And so you kind of wind up, you just feel anxious and like you're dying. So I was just like, yeah, maybe give me the Benadryl, and that'll clear it up. So I take the Benadryl, and I'm so exhausted that as soon as it kicks in, I just fall into a really uncomfortable drug sleep. Like you can tell, it doesn't feel like a restful sleep. It just feels like, oh God, my system is shutting down. And then I wake up 3 hours later, and I'm feeling even worse. I think the Benadryl was a really bad idea. So I call them in and I say, like, is there anything I can do? Is there anything, and they're like, well, there's this nebulizer thing. And it's 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh no, man. Okay, let's try the nebulizer. I've never had it before. So the technician comes in, and I kind of look at her, and I'm just like, so this is the end of my sleep for the night, right? And she's like, yeah, probably. I don't think you're going to rest very much after this. And I say, okay. So they do this nebulizer treatment, and my one observation is that the nebulizer tastes awful. Like, you normally don't get a lot of taste for your albuterol. It's not good in the best of times. But boy, can you really taste the albuterol in a nebulizer treatment. You get a lot of that stuff in you. And now I'm frickin' wired. The asthma's gone, but oh my God. I don't know when. I think I stayed up till about 7 o'clock and then just passed out. And again, mostly just alone. No one can visit you in these times. No one can come in. People can't get things to you. You can't ask for stuff. I could have asked for Claudia if she could have seen me to smuggle in some Zyrtec. Maybe things would have been better. So I got no toothbrush. I got nothing. Which is one thing to take away from all this. If you guys think you're going to have to go to the hospital for an extended stay, pack a hospital bag. Prepare one. Because you're going to be quarantined, and you're not going to be able to get access to stuff that your family could bring you in a normal situation. You're going to want to bring your own toothbrush, maybe some toothpaste, just some stuff to look after yourself, because I'm not sure what all the hospital can provide, but if you're American, toothpaste probably costs you $300 at the hospital, so if you don't have insurance, you're in trouble. So anyway, though, the next morning the doctor comes in, and this new doctor I wish was the one that I had seen the day before, because she's really sympathetic. And she's like, how are you feeling? And she lets me tell her, and she's like, and so she's kind of talking to me about this, and she's like, all right, so I see that you were asked to find a specialist. And so the previous day I'd called around, and most of the asthma and allergy specialists are closed or doing business remotely. You have to call them and tell them your symptoms. And that's not really going to help me, because I can describe my symptoms, but I think I can't figure out what's causing these allergic reactions. And so what I'm hoping is that maybe I can go see an allergist, and that they'll do a skin test where they'll put a couple of different allergens on your back. And if you get like a welt, like you break out in hives on it, then they'll kind of know what you're most allergic to. Because that was how I found out. The most allergic thing I'm allergic to is cats, because they did that test, and then like the cat prick was really, really exaggerated. And so they were like, yeah, you're like an 8 out of 10 on cats. So I remembered that, and I thought, like, okay, so I found a place that was still accepting patients, and I don't know why they were accepting patients, but I assumed it was because they had some kind of battle plan for this sort of thing. They thought, well, people still need to come into these offices from time to time, so we'll stay open, and we've got some structure in place, because it was a larger clinic, so I thought they must have something in place that I could call them and come in, and everything would be fine. So I call them and I tell them where I'm calling from. I say, I'm calling from the hospital. I'm having these symptoms. The doctor told me to find a specialist and that they discharge me tomorrow. And they say, okay, and they set up the appointment and everything. So I think it's cool. And the following morning, like I say, this ER doctor, she says, so I see you got a specialist. And I say, yeah, I called them and they set up an appointment for today. So if you release me today, I'll get out of here and I'll go see that specialist and hopefully I'll figure out what's causing me these symptoms. And so she says, okay, good. That's what we'll do. None of the tests came through. Like I say, my primary physician was not able to get me any tests at the hospital. Nobody was there to do the test. Even the nurses mentioned that they'd sent home a lot of the sort of general guys who would have done these types of things. No one's really making rounds like they used to. Everyone's just getting prepared for COVID. They're clearing out floors. It's just there's a lot of gaps that are left for chronic illnesses and things that aren't really extreme emergencies. So, like I say, there wasn't anything available. I think the only thing I could have gotten was a CAT scan, and that was something like my doctor and I were both like, she was just going through on Monday after I'd woken up feeling the symptoms, and she was like, okay, so I'm gonna try and get this and maybe this, and she goes, it could be physiological. I really doubt it, but we could, is this bad enough you'd want a CAT scan? And I was like, yeah, anything, everything. I'm not like this. Normally she would give me options and we'd talk through it. And I would tend to start with the smallest thing and then kind of work my way up, and I'd talk to the doctor and we'd go through these plans. I've never been in this situation where she's like, well, we could go a little more extreme, and I would just say, yeah. So she kept proposing. She's like, so what about this? And well, we could go more extreme. But, so how acute is this? And it was just one of those things. It's life-threatening. I'm dying. A CAT scan. Yes, God, anything. Just whatever. I need to find out today. Because by the end of this, before I went in the hospital, I'll admit, I was starting to, my thoughts were starting to get a little dark. It was like, I can't keep doing this, because it's like every single day I have these feelings of impending death. And it's kind of like, jumping into traffic would make these feelings go away faster than waiting for another hour for the symptoms to go down. And I can't even figure out what's making the symptoms go away. So it was just getting to be really desperate. And it was like, so, they did call me with the CAT scan, and they're like, we could do a CAT scan. And I was like, is that all you can do? A CAT scan? Like, the physiological answer is probably the least likely. Man, this is all that's here. So I told them, don't do the CAT scan, because I didn't get to do any of the other tests. The CAT scan was going to be at the end of it all. If they did these other tests and couldn't find anything, then I was going to go do the CAT scan, because I can't explain it. Then maybe it is physiological, because that can happen. It's just really unlikely. So anyway, though, so I canceled the CAT scan. I told them, yeah, don't do that. No CAT scan. And I got out of the hospital and I went home and I took a shower. And during the shower, my throat started to swell up again, and I started having another asthma attack. And so I rushed out. I threw on some clothes and I rushed out of the house, and I left my glasses. I wear glasses now, by the way. I left my glasses. All the papers I had from the hospital, I left them in the house. I just rushed out of there. I ran out of the place without hardly grabbing anything. Just my wallet, the keys, and then just took albuterol and Benadryl again. And so that's when I said, okay, it is something in the house. But what was the catch? What could it be? And so at this point, I was thinking, mold must be the answer, but it has to be hidden. Maybe behind those little mold patches we saw, maybe there's a bunch of mold in the walls and I just can't see it. There wasn't moisture, but maybe there's been water damage, maybe something. I was just going over in my head, where's the mold? Where could it be? It's gotta be mold. It can't be that I've just developed a sudden allergy to the dog. It must be airborne. It's gotta be these things. And I'm just going through this stuff in my head and I'm trying to figure out. And my parents say, look, I don't care if we get COVID. I don't care what's going on, just come over. My parents say, come over and stay with us. We'd rather that you be here and we get potentially, COVID can kill people, but it doesn't always. But, this sounds like it's going to kill you if you keep doing this. So they said, so come home, come stay with us for a while. So I go to my parents' house and I'm still having symptoms kind of throughout the day, but they're not nearly as pronounced. And so it really is. It's in the home, and every little flare up, every time my throat starts to swell up a little bit, it's another just mortal panic. I can't, I'm having a really hard time keeping it together. In fact, I call the pharmacy because I'm taking so many drugs, and I'm just like, hey, I'm freaking out, and I'm taking a lot of these drugs. Can you please recommend me? Like, is there a way I should be trying to stagger these or anything? Maybe I just will calm down a little bit, and I'm not taking so much. And so he talked to me for a while, and he couldn't really help, but just having him talk me through my drugs kind of helped me feel a little bit better. And I'm sorry for the pharmacist had to have been busy, but it helped a lot, and so I'm really glad that he talked me through it. So my appointment for the allergist came in, and so I told him, like, yeah, I'm the guy. They called from the hospital, and they took my temperature, and they asked me these things. They went me through all this. I can tell you all this stuff. Have you been out of the country? Have you been running a fever? Have you been around anyone who's had COVID? It's sort of like, no. I've had x-rays. My white blood cell count isn't elevated. I don't have any signs of a blood infection. I've done this stuff. And so the nurses at first were a little leery about it. I was like, yeah, they've done these blood tests. They're not showing any signs of any kind of like bacterial or viral infection. Currently, my white blood cell count is down. I'm like, have you been tested for COVID? And they say, no, they haven't done any tests for COVID. No one thinks I have COVID. In fact, doctors are mad because I don't have COVID, and I'm just reporting respiratory symptoms. They think I'm malingering, so it's just sort of like there's nothing to indicate I have COVID. There's no link to this. I don't think it's COVID. My primary physician doesn't think it's COVID. I don't think any of the none of the ER people thought it was COVID. Most of them are underplaying the symptoms. I don't know what it is, but it's not COVID. So they're like, okay. And so they take me to a room and they isolate me. Like, they just take me to an office. They give me a mask and then they isolate me in this room. And I'm kind of looking around, and with all I've been through with the hospital system and the realization that there's these gaps for chronic illnesses there now, I'm thinking to myself that the precautions are really well warranted. Like, I understand them wanting to make sure I don't come in contact with anybody while I'm here. Because, even if, I would not want to go to the hospital for asthma. Not right now. It's not a good time to be in the hospital for a chronic issue, especially a respiratory issue. So I'm just sitting here thinking, like, man, and I'm even kind of worried about, like, I've been let in, like, gosh, I've been exposed to the hospital environment. Maybe I shouldn't be here. I don't know, but they probably have a plan. But I rapidly discover they bring in like the standard forms, but the nurse, before she comes in, she puts on a hazmat suit. So she comes in covered head to toe, and like, she's got like a face guard and the N95 mask and everything. She's like total hazmat, and then she hands me a clipboard and gets out of the room. And so I take that and I'm like, oh shoot, they just used an entire hazmat suit to give me a clipboard. Oh my god. And it really doesn't get better from there. Like, man, if they brought in clowns and like slipped in a pie, and like someone had lit their pants on fire and then jumped in a pool, it would have been just as helpful to me. Because the doctors come in and they're trying to spend as little time with me as possible, and they put on all the hazmat gear and they waste the N95 mask, and they're doing this stuff. And then the doctor comes in and he's like, what do you want from me? And it occurs to me that the doctors must not have had a lot of say in the policy that allowed me into their office, because he's not happy. He thinks I have COVID. So I tell him what I came in with, and he's like, do you have any papers from the hospital? And I tell him, no, I had a flare-up when I went home, and I rushed out of the house, and I left the paperwork, and I feel really bad because I'm and he thinks I have COVID, and I don't even have the papers that tell him what all they were doing with me in the hospital. So he leaves me in this room for 3 hours. And he's seeing other patients for the most part, but he did tell me that apparently for the last hour he'd been talking to someone. By the end of the third hour, I've been on steroids. I haven't slept in 2 days. Man, these drugs really mess with your mood, I gotta say. And I'm doing my best not to get angry, but I have to be honest, I was really angry. And I'm sitting here using these 3 hours to look up drug interactions and trying to figure out, like, okay, if it is mold, what should I be taking? What shouldn't I be taking? When I can get a hold of my primary physician again, what do I want to talk to her about? Like, where do I want to go from here? And I'm basically just playing Dr. Greg. I am the doctor. And I've been feeling like the doctor for a while because I've been kind of able to prescribe myself my own, my own treatments. I'm sort of just treating myself for all this time, for this whole week. So, and it's scary. like, not only am I mad, but it's scary because I haven't confirmed that I figured out the problem yet, and I'm just trying to work with it as much as I can. But this it's the only one who's been taking my symptoms really seriously is my primary physician, but that's because, I have a relationship with her, and I've never been one to overreact about medicine before. She'll give me these options. I'll always take the lightest option. I always start small and we'll work our way up if we have to. But I'd rather take the fewest number of meds and make the fewest number of assumptions about my health. This has just been a really harrowing week is all. So the doctor comes back in at the end of this 3-hour stay, and it's closing time at his office. Basically, he's kept me in there for all this time, and they have me do a breathing test, and I don't know why they'd have me do this, because I breathe, and I've been on the prednisone, these steroids, which suppresses your immune system. So even had I still been having problems, I probably would have been breathing okay because of the steroids. But they had me take this breathing test to say they did something. I don't know, so they could charge me for something, I guess. I'm not even really sure why, because then it just agitated my breathing. And so I put the mask back on, but still had to cough. And so I coughed once, and then I could hear them panicking. They put me back in the room, and I could hear them panicking. They're like, oh God, he coughed. Like, what do we do? Do we burn the building down? Like, what now? Again, like I say, it was like bringing the clowns. It was just madness. I wasn't prepared for them to be less prepared than me. So, yeah, so the doctor comes in, and he goes, you have COVID. And I'm like, no, like there's swelling in my throat, and then it goes away, and I've been taking, and he's like, no, he goes, that's not how anaphylaxis works. That's not how anaphylaxis works. I don't know what you think the swelling in your throat is, but this is not what you have. He goes, I think that you've had an asthma exacerbation because you had a viral attack, and maybe you didn't have, your white blood cell count is down because you're already, you're getting over it, and this is the end of your COVID, but you're still probably contagious. And I don't want you in my office, so he's telling me this, and so I'm mad, and I'm like, listen, like a really frightening number of doctors have let me make a lot of decisions, and the exchange was really pretty terse. It was not really my best moment with the doctor. I generally don't try to second guess people, but like I say, it had been not only upsetting but frightening. And so I just told him, like, so here's what I'm gonna do for the time being. Is it okay if I take Zyrtec and Single-Air together? Is that fine? Can you at least give me that amount of medical advice? And he was like, yes, that's fine if you take those drugs together. And I was like, all right. And I'm thinking about maybe I won't take this drug because it's like a corticosteroid, and maybe I'll come down with COVID because I've been in the hospital, but I don't think it's COVID. And if I come down with it, I certainly don't want a compromised immune system in the meanwhile. And he was like, I can't recommend you on that. You need to talk to your primary care physician and decide from there. And I was like, okay, fine. And I'll take, and it was just, it wasn't helpful to me at all, and all it did was really put his staff and everyone at risk. So I get home, and we wash our clothes, and I sleep, and the next morning I'm not having as many symptoms. My parents used to have a cat, and the cat stuff still lingers, so I'm having some allergy troubles at the house, but they're like regular allergy troubles, not like the ones I've had. And so we wash our clothes in vinegar and everything like that, and after some sleep, and I haven't taken the prednisone, I'm able to get a hold of my primary care physician, and I say, yeah, it seems to be in the house, and we're not sure what it is yet, but I think it might be mold, and I've called a mold guy to come and check it out. And so they're going to look at the house, and we're going to figure out if it's mold, because it's my only lead so far. I can't figure out what else it could be. And so it's, the doctor's like, okay, we'll here's kind of where we go. And so I talked it out with my doctor, and I had a mold guy come in. And so the next day, again, still not showing symptoms because I'm out of the house, it turns out that there was this massive infestation of mold. And it was like there was the spore cloud count was like 2,000 spores per cubic meter or something like that. And like the safe recommended, it was like penicillium or aspergillium. It's really difficult to differentiate the two, so they just throw them together in the test. But the mold guy came in and he was like, yeah, this is the weirdest thing because I didn't smell any mold or like notice any patches. Like I didn't see anything that I would have flagged as like a likely mold location. So I don't know where your mold is at, guys, but you have got a ton of mold in this house. No wonder you're having health problems. And then that day, Claudia and I were out walking around, and I wasn't back up to 100% yet, so it was kind of a short walk because I still kind of had to recover from everything. But while we were walking, I say, "Hey, do you remember that carpet in the garage?" And Claudia goes, "Oh my God." And I was like, yeah, and remember how the carpet tack was rusted? And she's like, "Oh my God." And I go, "The carpet is full of mold. And it's in the garage. And the reason why it didn't get bad until now is because it's been in the garage. It didn't warm up until just recently. And when it warmed up, the garage warmed up. Oh my God. And then it all clicked. And so it was like we had mold. It was the carpet. We hired some people and we threw the carpet out. And now we've come home and we've washed everything. I've gotten back in touch with the doctor. And with the context of this now, my wife's symptoms all make sense now too. The dizziness and the heart palpitations and everything. It all makes sense now. Now we got it. It was mold. It was a huge mold infestation in the garage because we didn't throw away the carpet when it was cold. Because I thought it was pet dander in the carpet that was giving me asthma. I didn't realize that the carpet was moldy. And Claudia was like, "Yeah, no. Like, I tore that carpet up in the basement and I checked to see how old it was. That was put in there in like the 80s. So they had water damage, who knows how far back. I don't know how the previous residents were dealing with it. They must just not have been bothered by it. Or maybe it was trapped under the carpet and us pulling it up to give it a chance to bloom." But anyway, though, that carpet had been down there for a long time, and it was moldy. So, now we're home, and we've been washing everything in the house. We've gone through like 2 gallons of vinegar, and throwing 2 cups of vinegar with every wash, and doing our best to mitigate the whole thing. We're kind of having symptoms on and off a little bit, and I'm frightened a little bit because when you get a lot of mold spores, if there's any kind of dampness in the house, they'll find it and they'll root in there. But I'm hopeful that the house is pretty dry. We've torn up everything that I can think of that could be a danger, and we've washed the curtains, we've washed the clothes, we've washed this, we've washed that. And my wife, she's never had asthma before. She was trying to explain her symptoms, and she was like, "Yeah, these heart palpitations." And the doctor, she was saying she felt like she wasn't getting enough air. And so the doctor was like, "Well, I'm going to give you some albuterol. And if you continue to feel that, you might try it. But with the heart symptoms, it's hard to say." She goes, "I really wish I could have you guys come in the office. I really wish I could do maybe an EKG because I'm really worried about giving you something that's going to increase your heart rate if you're having heart problems. But the way things are," she goes, "I'm not even sure where to send you for an EKG if it's not an emergency right now. All these things are closing down." And so anyway, Claudia had never had asthma symptoms before, and she didn't know how to describe it. So she was, the other day, she was just like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, it is going to make your heart race, but give it a shot." And so she took the albuterol, and she's like, oh my God, I can feel my chest opening up. Oh my God, is this what like a normal breathing is supposed to be like? Oh, it feels gross. And she started hacking up a bunch of phlegm and everything like that. And I was like, you've had asthma symptoms. You didn't realize it must have set in kind of slowly because you would have noticed if it was fast. So, yeah, man, we're getting back on track. We probably spent a lot of money, but we've had some emergency money set aside. We have insurance. That the deductible's been hit for sure. We haven't started receiving bills yet or anything like that. So we're in better shape than a lot of people could be, and in better shape than a lot of people will be as things ensue with this whole COVID situation. So and we haven't even had COVID yet. But we're hopeful that it won't be too bad if we do get it. My sister's, like I say, getting through it right now. And for the most part, she said it's really fatiguing. She's having a hard time getting around the house and everything like that. But for the most part, as long as she lays down and relaxes, she's going okay. So we're just hoping that won't turn into pneumonia. She'll be fine. And then because she works at the hospital, they're probably going to rush her right back in there as soon as she's able. Because they're I don't know, it's pretty wild at the moment. So, it's been quite a week. All I can take away from all this is, man, if you've got chronic illnesses, make sure you're treating them at home. Stay on top of those. Be aware of stuff. The medical system is stretched a little thin right now, or in just at the very least, a weird place. It's been bad, but I'm glad to be out of the woods on this at least. And I honestly suspect that as long as I don't wind up with pneumonia If I do get COVID, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad as this kind of like rolling anaphylaxis thing has been. Oh, right, and in case it wasn't clear, the reason why I kept feeling better when I was laying down was again, I think I mentioned this already, but it was the air filter. That air filter in my bedroom was apparently saving my life. I don't know if I would have died from that anaphylaxis. It felt life-threatening, but man, that filter was clearing the room of spores enough that I was able to recover from those symptoms by just laying in the room for a while. So that's like a Honeywell something or other, big black air purifier. Gotta give a recommendation for that brand. It frickin' works. So yeah, I think a lot of things would have happened differently if not for the pandemic. I mean, I would have gotten out of the house a lot sooner for one thing, but I don't know. It is what it is, and things are gonna continue to evolve and see how it is. Like I say, we're still okay. My wife is still employed, at least for now. Everything's up in the air. We don't know if she'll continue to be employed going on. A lot of people are, still facing a lot of uncertainty, but we're doing okay for now. I'm glad to report. So yeah, that's that story. That's where I've been for a while. And on the bright side, if everything goes well and we continue to endure and my wife doesn't get laid off, I should, in theory, have more time to work on stuff going forward. And yeah, I was actually really productive before all this set in. I was getting a lot done. I was getting ahead on Steve and finding time for other projects. It's been great. Miles was really happy with both of his parents home most of the day. Get to bounce back and forth between us. He was just happy as a clam. It's been a little anxious since I've been having my issues, but we're getting things back in order. So I hope that the rest of you guys are found well. I hope that you're taking these health things seriously. You don't need to panic, because remember, a lot of people the majority of people do okay when they get sick. It can be bad and everything like that, but if you've got any kind of underlying issues or chronic things, take it really seriously. If you're feeling ill, contact your primary care physician, keep in touch. Try to talk to your physician, just keep bases with them if you feel like you need to. It's tough for everybody right now. And this is the thing, this is the really scary thing about the pandemic, is I don't think that it's necessarily that, while people are definitely dying from it, and at a much greater rate than you see with the flu and everything else like that, one of the bigger threats right now is just the strain that it's placing on the healthcare system. Because it's not just dangerous to people who get COVID, it's dangerous to people like, for example, myself, who have some kind of asthma problem, where it's harder to get treatment for something that might have been a little bit more easy to figure out in a different scenario. So stay at home, try not to get sick, try not to spread things around. Don't panic, don't do anything crazy, be respectful of the whole situation, and what can I say, we'll get through this and on into the next problem when it arrives, and that's just life for you. So I hope you guys are found well. I hope you all stay safe, and I hope you all stay healthy. And I will catch you guys next time.